Why does the U.S. support Israel so staunchly? Shared values? A military outpost in the Middle East? Or an unending apology for Holocaust? Any of them or all of them would be the answer. Yet, it is noteworthy that the U.S. politicians, whether today or in the past, whether they be Republican or Democrat, vehemently pledge support to any Israeli action. This support goes much beyond alliance, but becomes the embracement of Israel's sick-minded Zionism.
You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, and I'm a Zionist.
And we're going to make Israel great again, and we're going to make America great again. We're going to make them both great again, greater than ever before.
As long as I'm a United States Senator, I will do everything in my power to ensure broad and bipartisan support for Israel's security.
Less than a month left for the U.S. elections, the same question keeps minds occupied. Is the U.S. politics strangled by pro-Israeli lobbies? Looking at the consequences of their activities, such as unseating certain politicians or ensuring further monetary aid from the government, the answer seems to be yes.
Good morning, AIPAC.
AIPAC, American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, which is the biggest pro-Israeli group but ironically ineligible to make any donations, has already officially spent more than $100 million in the electoral races via guiding individuals or registered lobby groups. Existing in the U.S. for almost half-century, AIPAC basically pushes members of Congress, presidents, and other elected officials to pass policies that unconditionally support Israel. Up to today, the staunchest supporters of Israel within U.S. politics have received enormous donations from AIPAC, including the U.S. President Joe Biden, the now bribery-convicted Robert Menendez, Hillary Clinton, John McCain, Ted Cruz, and so on. But AIPAC is not only this. Let's give an ear to American-Palestinian journalist and author Ramzy Baroud, who believes AIPAC is more than a simple lobby and has bypassed U.S. policy-making mechanisms entirely.
What is happening between Israel and the United States is not exactly lobbying in that sense. In fact, the largest, supposedly the most powerful lobby groups of them all, AIPAC, is not even registered as a foreign lobby group, as if you are part of the domestic politics of America. And this is, I think, is the greatest achievement of the so-called Israel lobby. Is not, number one, their ability to behave in a way that made Israel a domestic issue in American politics.
Furthermore, Baroud argues that most of American policymakers themselves were acting like a pro-Israel lobbyist.
The neoconservatives, which is the powerful ruling elite that had a great sway of power over American foreign policy during the George Bush administration, they are essentially all pro-Israel lobbyists. Many of them had dual citizenships. Many of them worked for Israeli organizations, Israeli companies, played the roles of advisors within the Israeli government, close to Benjamin Netanyahu and others. And they were yet the ones presented to the American public through American media, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and all the rest. They presented themselves as, good old Americans.
Obviously, the most striking example was Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who declared his support for Israel as a Jew.
I come before you not only as the United States Secretary of State, but also as a Jew. My grandfather, Maurice Blinken, fled pogroms in Russia.
Another example would be Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who also has given a speech in an AIPAC meeting. His words for Israel go beyond that of a statesman, but resembles that of a partisan.
We're going to continue to do everything we can to provide them the support that they need.
Unsurprisingly, New York Times questioned the appointment of Lloyd Austin to his current position back in 2020 for the fact that he was serving on the board of RTX, Raytheon Arms Company. The very same company has been providing various arms or military components to Israel.
When we say the word "the lobby" in his book, we're not really referring to a group of people per se, but we are referring to a massive apparatus that is embedded so deep in numerous aspects of American society. They coordinate, they work together, but they don't necessarily all come from a single group of people working for a single agency like AIPAC or any other.
Still, AIPAC's current concern is the upcoming elections. AIPAC proudly says all the Democrats and 193 Republicans that it has endorsed have won their primary races. Things seem to be more undemocratic than they look. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, who has been the only Republican speaking against Israel's human rights violations, reveals how the system works.
Everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What does that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are, firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
every member has something like this?
I may be the only Republican in Congress who hasn't done homework for AIPAC.
Only saying that killing thousands of people in Gaza were concerning him triggered AIPAC to spend nearly $500,000 against him, and White House to label him as anti-Semitic.
This election cycle, they spent $400,000 against me, $90,000 last fall running TV ads in my district and Facebook ads and whatnot. Now they're banned from my office. The situation went from bad to worse.
Massie was successful enough to survive AIPAC, but Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush were not.
Collective punishment of 2.3 million people is a war crime.
AIPAC has already started to spend against me in this race upwards of $20 million. Our democracy is not for sale. I need your help.
AIPAC has already said they're going to spend over $20 million to try to buy this seat from the people in the district, simply because we support a permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
Wesley Bell won against Bush.
Our relationship with Israel is not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. It is very much in our national security interest to stand with our Israeli partners.
George Latimer, who referred to Israeli borders as our borders, defeated Bowman.
That now we're going to have to take action because this threat is on our border. It's manifested itself in a vicious implementation of the threat.
Looking at what's happening to anti-Israel politicians, we can ask the question of whether the party of the next president would make any difference.
Is there a difference between Harris and Trump? I don't think so, because I think ultimately the foreign policy of America will continue to be determined by the same individuals, organizations, deep state, if you will, that has been managing American foreign policy for all these years. And just a very quick example to prove that this has to be the case, the United States Congress voted in favor of moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And every 6 months, and the executive branch, meaning the White House, would sign a document deferring that move 6 months at a time. All American presidents kind of did the same thing, Democrats or Republicans. What Trump has done, he decided, I will not defer it for another 6 months. This has been the habit for years and years and years. Trump has only speeded up that process. Now that Biden is a president, he had the chance to reverse many of the steps that Trump have made. To the contrary, not only he actually remained committed to what Trump has decided to do, he also doubled up on the whole normalization efforts. So, will Harris change that? I don't think so.
As a matter of fact, Kamala Harris has also received donation from AIPAC amounting to more than $6 million. What about Donald Trump? Even worse, as he is endorsed by Miriam Adelson, who broke up with AIPAC for it has not opposed giving humanitarian aid to Palestinian Authority. So if all the politicians, except a few, were under Israeli lobby's influence, why are they still spending millions? The answer implies a gradual change within the U.S. public opinion. Polls indicate that up to 55% of U.S. population is disapproving Israeli military attacks on Gaza. Only 18% of those who vote for Democrats approve Israel. This makes clear why AIPAC spends most of its money on Democrats.
There has been a shift in the United States. a shift that is unprecedented in the history of America's relationship to the Middle East in general and Palestine in particular. And the shift is a grassroots shift. The shift is not happening at the top. The top is not disagreeing on anything. In the empowering and the emboldening of specific progressive voices within certain areas where the support for Palestine is stronger, that would allow these individuals not only to be elected as to the local senates or the state senates or that sort of thing, but actually to the federal government's Congress as well. This is a very, very important change, and it has been quite alarming.
With a stranglehold on U.S. politics, AIPAC has been putting its efforts to stop this bottom-up transformation. Nevertheless, the U.S. taxpayers' money and votes are largely controlled by someone else.
It's someone else runs the show. That someone else is not necessarily the president or even the party that rules over America.
Thank you very much.
AIPAC is the oldest pro-Israel lobby in the U.S. Originally called the American Zionist Committee for Public Affairs, AIPAC was founded in 1951 by Isaiah Keenan, who was a registered Israeli foreign agent. Their main goal was to secure weapons and financial assistance to the newly formed State of Israel. The name was later changed so that it can be registered in the U.S. as a tax-exempt social welfare group, which allowed AIPAC not to disclose information about the sources of their funding. AIPAC is part of a large pro-Israel network in the U.S. Today, AIPAC is part of a much wider network of pro-Israel lobby groups working to achieve bipartisan U.S. support for the State of Israel by making contributions to Israel-friendly lawmakers. Millions generated by AIPAC annually. By its own admission, AIPAC has 100,000 members. Through various different donations and club membership fees that range from $60 to $100,000 a year, AIPAC generates millions. According to the group's most recent public tax records, they received more than $96 million in 2017. Pro-Israel groups engage in political fundraising. Officially, it is illegal for AIPAC to engage in political fundraising, but that's just a technicality. Fundraising is a huge part of the group's operation. In the 2018 midterm elections, more than $14.9 million was raised by pro-Israel groups for candidates. That's their third biggest contribution ever. Out of 435 members of the House of Representatives, 269 received pro-Israel lobby contributions at an average of more than $23,000 per representative. And out of 100 U.S. senators, 58 accepted contributions at an average of more than $77,000 per senator. AIPAC pushes for laws in Congress. Each year, AIPAC and other pro-Israel lobby groups put their weight behind a number of legislations, especially when they are anti-Iran, anti-Palestine, and of course, pro-Israel. These legislations include moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, cutting aid to Palestinians, and countering the BDS movement. The group also lobbied heavily against the Obama-era Iran deal, which President Donald Trump withdrew from in 2018.